Tonight, from blackouts to blizzards, Canadians caught in the path of powerful spring storms. Hammered by a round of wintry weather.
Pretty unreal. It's April. This is not what I expect right now.
The damage and the rescues.
Everybody was pretty much just stuck in a train. Nobody knew what's going to happen.
A price check on the paycheck of Loblaw CEO.
It would take, an average worker 340 years to earn what Gale and Weston earned.
A compensation controversy as food prices climb. Plus, history lessons in the age of AI.
I wanted something that was fun and kind of silly, and it just started to snowball.
Using digital portraits to draw a wider audience to Canada's past.
Really excited about bringing those to my students.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Millions of Canadians got a harsh midweek wake-up call today about nature's wrath, and the impact of those fierce spring storms is still being felt tonight. Across Ontario and Quebec, close to 1 million customers were without power after a messy mix of freezing rain and thunderstorms pounded both provinces. CTV's Kevin Gallagher starts us off with the damage and the rescues.
Freezing rain coated the capital, causing havoc on the roads and cutting power to at least 5 Ottawa transit trains.
Thank you all for your patience.
Stranding passengers for more than 2 hours.
We were frozen. There's no heat.
Firefighters needed to cut open a fence to rescue riders.
Everybody was pretty much just stuck in a train. Nobody knew what's going to happen.
The nasty weather snapped branches. This one hit someone, sending them to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, according to paramedics.
It's April. This is not what I expect right now.
The disruptive system uprooted trees across Quebec too, knocking out power to more than 800,000 customers at one point.
The hope we have is that temperatures will rise in the next few hours, and the ice that added on the branches and vegetation and even on our installations, this ice will melt.
The massive trail of moist air stretches all the way from the Gulf of Mexico, colliding with an Arctic blast. A Colorado low that unleashed winter woes on Winnipeg.
Well, it is Manitoba. It is what it is, and we knew the snow was coming for a while, so not surprising.
The snow even got the best of this snowplow, which ended up in a ditch. Lightning strikes shocked many in Toronto as thunder showers soaked streets, putting much of southern Ontario under a flood watch.
There's really a concern of flash flooding, too much rain in a short period of time, but also in swollen rivers.
5 provinces were under weather warnings today, with heavy rains expected to continue tonight in Ottawa. While tomorrow's forecast here calls for 10 degrees above freezing, Omar. So these icy conditions should be short-lived.
Massive cleanup, but at least some more seasonal weather ahead. Kevin, thanks. More than 30 million Americans are also under weather alerts tonight as severe storms make their way from Louisiana to Pennsylvania. There have been more than 200 reports of extreme weather across the Midwest in the last 2 days, including high wind, hail, and tornadoes, including one in Missouri that killed at least 5 people and left behind a devastating path of destruction in a small town.
Glen Allen will never be the same. There's no doubt about it.
There have been at least 478 tornado reports across 25 states this year, double the average. Efforts to eject people living in tents on the sidewalks of Vancouver's downtown east side were met with resistance today. Police made one arrest after protesters threw projectiles at officers and sprayed them with fire extinguishers. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy on the forced removal of those with nowhere to go.
With dozens of police officers just steps away, a group of men scrambled to salvage all they own. They're cramming their belongings into a cab because sanitation crews are sweeping the area, removing the tents and makeshift structures that have been blocking sidewalks for months. What's been going on?
Told us we had to move and said we had 10 minutes.
Fearing repercussions for speaking publicly about the sweep, Jay hides his face. So they only give you 10 minutes to pack up your entire life?
Yeah, pretty much.
He's long been living on Hastings Street in Vancouver's poverty-stricken downtown east side, just one of the city's most vulnerable.
The housing problem around here is ridiculous, even for myself.
I lost my job, I lost my condo, and my only option was to live in a tent or in a shelter.
We don't get in anybody's way. We're not rude to people that are walking down the street.
Around the same time police shut down the area, the city released a statement saying due to a growing public safety risk, the encampment, as they call it, would be brought to a close.
Every day we're hearing new and sometimes horrific stories, theft, vandalism, senseless acts of violence.
The city first flagged safety concerns last summer, claiming that along with increasing violence, the tents, often heated with propane, were becoming fire hazards.
This area alone has had an increase of 340% of outdoor fires. Since the fire order went in place, over 1,600 propane tanks have been removed.
City officials say all those moved out have been offered temporary shelter.
The BC Housing's opened up spaces.
There's not one person handing out or taking housing applications, not one person.
As for Jay, where are you going to go?
Wherever the next day takes me.
He says he'll use all the money he has to pay for the cab that will take him from the only home he knows. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
East of Edmonton, a CN rail train carrying grain derailed early this morning. 17 cars came off the tracks. CN Rail says no one was injured in the crash. The cause is unknown, but Canada's Transportation Safety Board is investigating. At a time when Canadians are paying more for the cost of food, another major increase is getting a lot of attention tonight. A pay raise in the millions for Loblaw CEO Galen Weston. CTV's Heather Butts reports.
Grocery bills aren't the only thing on the rise, so are the salaries of grocery executives, among them Galen Weston. Loblaw's paid Weston $8.5 million last year, up from $5.4. When you add up his oversight of Loblaw, George Weston Limited, and Choice Properties, his total pay hit $11.79 million.
Okay, it's time for the PC Insiders Report Summer Edition.
Weston's raise comes after a compensation review. Loblaw says this is not a unique pat on the back. Review for executives is standard and overseen by the company's board of directors.
It's an important part of the business cycle that CEOs be paid, competitive salaries. They carry the risk, and it's that high reward, high risk compensation package.
It's on par with the average salary of the top 100 CEOs in Canada, but creates social outrage at a time when a record number of Canadians are using food banks.
Who benefits when inflation drives up profits in the corporate world? Is it everybody who benefits, or is it just the executives and the shareholders?
Galen Weston recently defended his company's profit margins on Parliament Hill.
On a customer's $25 grocery basket, we earn just $1 in profit.
The head of the union, representing thousands of grocery store employees, says many can't afford to shop where they stock shelves. The average grocery worker earned nearly $19 an hour last year. That means it would take more than 340 years to match Weston's earnings.
They continuously try to justify the prices that they're charging, the profiteering that's occurring, and now trying to justify massive increases in CEO and executive suite compensation. It can't be justified.
Unifor says it will be at the bargaining table this year with all three major grocers and hopes the companies will be as generous with frontline workers. Omar.
All right, Heather Butts in Toronto tonight. Heather, thank you. A group of Canadians held in detention camps housing ISIS suspects in Syria have begun their journey back home. CTV News has learned the women and children are en route to Germany, but as CTV's Judy Trin reports, others are losing hope.
Repatriation is now a reality for some Canadians who have languished in these open-air prisons. A group has been transported by plane out of Syria to Germany. The lawyer representing them called relatives with the good news earlier today.
Every family, not surprisingly, was over the moon excited about the fact of their loved ones coming home.
But not all of his clients have reached safety. The 38-year-old Quebec mother of these children was left behind after Global Affairs did not complete her security assessment in time.
She was given the Solomon's cut the baby in half type choice, which was, do you want to have your 6 kids sent back to Canada, but you don't get a chance to go with them? Or do you want to keep them with you in the camp?
A group of foreign women married to Canadian men also face the same dilemma. The government only wants to repatriate their children. Meanwhile, this lawyer is planning to sue the federal government.
We're very concerned that another plane may leave and that, again, these women and children will not be on it.
The threat of legal action helped get the latest group of Canadians home. They could face charges, but anti-extremism experts say the mothers also need counseling and support to de-radicalize.
We're kind of in a difficult place because we want to bring them to justice, but at the same time, we want to minimize the harm on the children.
So far, this is the largest group of Canadians repatriated from detention camps in Syria. Sources say the mothers and children will soon be reunited with families in Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and the Montreal area. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. Poland's president promised more fighter jets during a visit by the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky's first official trip since the war began.
Героям слава!
Poland, a staunch ally of Ukraine, awarded Zelensky its highest honor. The country has accepted more than 1 million refugees from Ukraine since Russia invaded last year. Canada's prime minister has called for de-escalation after renewed violence in the Middle East. Israeli forces stormed a mosque with Palestinian worshippers in Jerusalem on the first day of Passover and during the month of Ramadan. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports on the clashes.
A surreal scene inside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa mosque during the holy month of Ramadan. Video provided by Israeli police show officers entering the mosque by force while shielding themselves as fireworks are launched in their direction. Moments later, a violent beating by Israeli security forces. This Palestinian worshiper saying the police were firing tear gas and stun grenades. It was a scene that I can't describe. Palestinian fighters responding by firing these rockets from Gaza towards Israel, culminating in repeated Israeli airstrikes. Police claim they entered the mosque after hundreds of rioters barricaded themselves inside. Israel's prime minister tweeting out that his forces were acting to maintain the status quo and calm the situation on the Temple Mount. The violence prompting this response from Prime Minister Trudeau.
We deplore what's going on right now in Israel. We need to see Israel, the Israeli government, shifting in its approach. And Canada is saying that as a dear and close and steadfast friend to Israel.
A member of Trudeau's Liberal Party calling out her own government's response, with MP Salma Zahid posting, "Canada cannot stand by and issue bland statements anymore. Either we stand for human rights or we don't." Critics who've spoken out in support of Palestinians believe Western nations must take a harder stance.
It's deplorable that people use violence on all sides, of course, but violence has continued and occupation has continued.
The increased violence comes after the deadliest year in the region in more than a decade. More than 20 Israelis and 150 Palestinians were killed last year, according to the UN. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. A shocking attack in Brazil today where a man armed with a hatchet burst into a daycare center, killing 4 children and wounding at least 5 others. Authorities say the 25-year-old jumped over a playground wall to get into the facility, then turned himself in at a police station after the murders. The victims were all between the ages of 5 and 7. Time for a break, but when we come back, a former prime minister recovering from cancer, plus...
And it gets them interested because it's just something fun.
A new hook to Canadian history. New documents reveal hundreds of Canada's federal bureaucrats have had their security clearances stripped since 2016, with at least 3 accused of spying. But as CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports, that number could be higher.
The high-level security clearances of at least 3 federal public servants accused of spying or acting on behalf of a foreign government have been revoked over the last 6 years. New parliamentary documents show one employee at Fisheries and Oceans had their clearance stripped in 2017. 2 years later, it happened again to one person at Employment and Social Development Canada and another at the Canada Border Services Agency, who acted on behalf of a foreign government by disclosing information to them. What information was disclosed and to what country's government, CBSA won't say.
Getting a security clearance is a long process.
The former head of CISA says he's not surprised.
It is a reality. There are people out there who are spying on Canada and have interest in securing information from Canadians, including from public servants. Inevitably, there will be a few people who get caught up in that.
While only 3 public servants have been accused of spying, more than 300 others since 2016 have had their security clearances pulled for unknown reasons.
The reality is that it actually shows that our system works, that in the end, we can find people who are unreliable. Our counterintelligence measures work. We're able to identify those individuals. We're able to revoke clearances.
Foreign interference has dominated headlines over the last few months following allegations of meddling in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. And the opposition want answers.
This is very serious, very concerning, and it really all points back to why we've been calling for a public inquiry into foreign interference.
Several departments, including Global Affairs, refused to say how many employees had security clearances revoked due to allegations of spying or acting on behalf of a foreign government. Omar.
All right, Annie Bergeron-Oliver in Ottawa. Thank you. We are learning tonight that former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is recovering after undergoing treatment for prostate cancer. The 84-year-old received medical treatment in Montreal last fall and is said to be doing well. Daughter and Ontario Transport Minister Caroline Mulroney saying in a statement she expects her father to be back to normal in the coming weeks. Prostate cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in Canadian men, but if caught early, the 5-year survival rate is close to 100%. And from one former Prime Minister to another in New Zealand. Today, Jacinda Ardern spoke in her country's parliament for the last time.
Now, I cannot determine what will define my time in this place, but I do hope I've demonstrated something else entirely, that you can be anxious, sensitive, kind, and wear your heart on your sleeve.
Her emotional speech was met with a standing ovation. Ardern stepped down from the top job in January, saying she had no more in the tank. Next month, she will start an unpaid role tackling online hate and join the Board of Trustees for Prince William's Environment Award, the Earthshot Prize. Still ahead, the whole truth behind a brazen crime.
Our front door was locked. They pried our front door open.
The thieves who cut through a wall to rob an Apple store. There was a frighteningly close call for customers at a Vancouver smoke shop. Surveillance video shows people entering the store, and moments later, a man in a mask pours something on the ground. Then this. As flames quickly spread outside, inside, a customer heading to the door ran back in. The store's staff acted immediately and doused the fire.
She was really scared and she went back over there and she was crying.
Fortunately, no one was hurt. Police say the fire appears to have been intentionally set. Thieves near Seattle got away with $500,000 worth of Apple products, and they did it by cutting through an adjoining wall. The burglars cut the hole in the bathroom wall of a coffee shop before making their way into the back room of the Apple store.
Our front door was locked. They pried our front door open.
Police say more than 400 iPhones were stolen, along with iPads and Apple Watches. Celine Dion, who has stolen the hearts of fans around the world with her powerful voice, is selling one of her houses in the Montreal suburb of Laval. The 20,000 square foot mansion comes with 16 rooms and what the brokerage describes as, quote, breathtaking views of the Rivière des Mille-Îles. List price just under $2.4 million. And no word if meeting Celine is part of the deal. Coming up, a new take on some other famous Canadians after the break.
And I wanted something that was fun and kind of silly because it would get people interested.
The pictures combining art, technology, and history. A podcaster from Alberta is turning to big hair, biker jackets, and musical flair to help ignite interest in Canadian history. Craig Baird uses artificial intelligence to generate unique portraits of politicians and other major Canadian figures. CTV's Bill Fortier spoke to the man finding a way to make the past meet the present.
Violet King shattered a few barriers already.
Podcasting about Canadian history is Craig Baird's day job, hosting one of, if not the country's biggest show on the topic.
Before he knew it, there was a gun pointed directly at his face.
He admits the subject is not always an easy sell.
It's been a long slog with it. I started because I wanted people to learn about Canadian history. I wanted people to see that Canadian history isn't boring.
Baird uses social media to promote his podcast and was looking for a new hook.
I wanted something that was fun and kind of silly because it would get people interested. It would get them to go through the thread.
This is what he came up with: prime ministers as 80s heavy metal band leaders, all generated by artificial intelligence. From the contemporary Justin Trudeau, Stephen Harper, and Kim Campbell, to the historical John A. Macdonald and Wilfrid Laurier, the Right Honourable Rockers have become a big hit.
I started seeing John Diefenbaker and Jean Chrétien trending on Twitter, which was crazy to actually make something that actually starts to trend. And then it's just continued since then.
The computer-generated portrait series is even getting noticed by educators across the country, including this Canadian Studies Department chair.
They're whimsical, they're fun, but that doesn't mean that they're not an effective tool that can be leveraged really successfully in the classrooms.
Baird's work has become so popular, he's branched out to AI-generated past and present premieres and some modern takes on notable Canadians like Louis Riel that came in as requests.
And it's great to see because it shows people are very interested in Canadian history, and at least in my mind.
Baird hopes his 5 minutes of Twitter fame translates to more podcast listeners, but ultimately the Canadian history buff just wants more people to pick up his passion for the past and maybe find a few laughs along the way. Bill Fortier, CTV News, Edmonton.
Celebrating our stories. And that's a snapshot of this Wednesday. To all Jewish communities across Canada celebrating, we wish you and your families a happy Passover. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching and good night.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast. 5 crucial questions to expose the truth. Who's at risk? What needs to change? When will justice be done?
There was actually a plot to kill you.
Where's the proof? Why did this happen? Watch W5 Saturdays at 7 on CTV.